We're delighted that you have joined us today. My name is Danny Morris. I'm a partner at GLA, Global Leadership Associates, and we run these community webinars roughly every quarter. And we're specialists in vertical development or adult development theory. So you'll see something of that flavor in all of the topics that we have at our community webinar. We've got such a fascinating topic today. So we're talking about vertical coaching and inclusion. I mean, and each of those are three meaty subjects. So we're going to try and bring them together, but hopefully you'll see something of a progression in the topic through the panel. And as we explore that together. So first of all, I want to introduce our panel. So first up is Aman Gohal. Aman is in the Bay Area, and many of you will know her as a coach to leaders in Silicon Valley, and she's also a member of our team. We've also got Bill Pullen. Many of you will know Bill from Georgetown as a former program director there for Georgetown's leadership coaching program. And Bill is a coach to many people around the world, and I'm delighted he's also a member of our team. And then after the breakouts, I'm also delighted we're going to be joined by Christopher McCormick. Christopher is Senior Director of Talent Development and Inclusion at the pharmaceutical that is a giant that is Gilead, based in San Francisco. Bill, if I might start with you, perhaps if you could give us some context to this. So what do we actually mean by coaching and inclusion? What are we covering here?
Yeah, so as I thought about this question, I was thinking about, the multiple levels of system and relationship. So first, there's the system of at the individual level, like how do I, as a coach, feel a sense of inclusion, and how might my own relationship to inclusion impact how I show up in a coaching relationship? And similarly for my client, like how does that interpersonal, like within themselves, relationship to inclusion play out in the coaching, but then how they lead in the world. And then there's at the relationship level. So how do we create as coaches an inclusive environment for our clients? How do we help them? How do we show up in a way for our clients that creates greater inclusion so that all of who the client is can show up in the coaching relationship in a way that feels safe and a place where they can grow. But then how do we also help our clients attend to the larger systems in which they operate? And how do we as coaches attend to the matters of inclusion in the larger systems and context in which they operate? And so I think as coaches, we're working actually at all three levels and need to be attending to all three levels if we're going to really support creating a more inclusive world.
So, Aman, what do we systemically reinforce when we hold these bodies of work, DEIB and leadership development, as separate? And Aman, if you could just speak to what DEIB is, because I think it's a word that means something very much in America and maybe needing explanation for others.
It's really wonderful to be with you all. I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces from Georgetown and GLA. So DEIB, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, sometimes referred to as JEDI in other countries, and social justice. And I think that Danny may have circulated the paper that Christopher McCormick and I recently put forward, and that has a few definitions from Washington University on each of those areas. And what do we systemically reinforce? So I have spent my entire career focused in leadership development and also in diversity and inclusion. And what I would find that was often really frustrating was to see that the separation was helpful, and it also reinforced this sort of reductionism of, well, we'll pay attention to this aspect when it's relevant, or, you know, we have funding for leadership dollars, wait a minute, now we have funding for diversity inclusion dollars. And it kept it at a level which we talk about in the paper of sort of a check off the box approach, and keeping it separate continued to reinforce viewing it in a very reductionist way. So I started to experiment as I grew in my career, and I was leading a leadership development practice for a technology company. What if we bridged and had a team called inclusive development, where it was about leadership development and organization development and also inclusion? And what would happen if we had that kind of a team that served as sort of a spoken wheel concept? And that not only landed really well, it was timely, and it helped to ensure that the curriculum across the board carried this thread. So what we really lose in the reductionism is the wholeness of the conversation.
Ditto to everything Aman just said. And what I would add is, I mean, I think sometimes it's easy to think, kind of building on what you said, these things out here, and forget that DEIB integrates across everything. Our identities are showing up in everything that we do. And so when we decouple these things, while there is usefulness, I think there's a real polarity around how do we keep it together and honor the distinctions in a body of work that is really important. I also think that there's a way in which we can think about like inclusion work out here. Like it's something that happens out here in systems, and it's happening out here in the world or in our organization or in our culture, and forget that it's also going on inside of us. And if all of our attention is oriented outwards to systems, sometimes we can forget that systems are made up of human beings that are bringing their own biases and to the systems. And so I think there is this, when we start to, part of sometimes what happens when we decouple is we just put it out here as a body of work that's happening, and take the eye off ourselves, whether it's as coaches, whether it's as leaders, as human beings, and our own internal development work, and how that will, the more we do our own internal development work, that will actually support us in creating new and more inclusive cultures and systems.
Aman, you wrote that article with Christopher on vertical development and inclusion. What does vertical offer inclusion?
Well, that was the premise of the whole conversation, is what would DEIB and social justice look like through a vertical lens? And really, what does vertical look like through a DEIB and social justice lens? And I just want to do a quick shout out to William, who's on the call, William Mackel, who I have had conversations with, where we have looked at other theorists, such as Bobby Harrow, who looks at the cycle of socialization and the cycle of liberation, and it very much parallels a vertical development approach. And the cycle of socialization really looks at how are we socialized into the systems we're a part of, our beliefs, our identity, how we start to make meaning of some of these things. And then the cycle of liberation is when we start to question these things and start to author and look at how we hold these identities or concepts or the ways that we've been conditioned for ourselves. And vertical, I think, offers a very powerful lens to inclusion.
Bill, so far we've kind of separated out, or maybe done pairs of the three in this topic. I wonder if you could start bringing it together. So vertical coaching and inclusion. Can you help us bring that together?
Yeah, so first, if we think about, when we talk about vertical development, we're really talking about sort of constructive development theory, which, you know, as many of you know, speaks to how we construct our sense of ourself and the world around us. and it explains these transformational shifts in our interpretation and meaning of ourselves and our world as we develop. So as opposed to and those constructions, or the way we construct our sense of ourself, are shaped by our underlying belief systems, as opposed to some objective world that's out there. It's how we make sense of that external world. And so it's basically the story we tell about ourselves and the world around us. And given that, if we want to move towards a more inclusive world, if we can, through ourselves or help others, start to really make visible, or to use the subject-object language, make object, how they've constructed their reality, the map and the sense of themselves and the world they've made, then they have more freedom to start to question and to explore, well, is that true? Is it still true? Was it true for me at one point, or is it less true for me now? And so like in coaching, if we can be with somebody, create a environment where there is enough of a sense of relationship and safety, where they're willing to open to our inquiries, open to their own inquiries, to really explore how they're making sense, that creates the potential for them to question some of these beliefs.
I tend to work in a very specific environment most of the time, production environment, in petrochemicals and car manufacturing, which is the typical team that I talk to or that I work with is cis males, 40 to 65 years old, men, white mainly, and Christopher, you mentioned it was blindness to privilege is something that you come across a lot in those environments. At the same time, a lot of these tend to be in diplomat, expert, or achiever stage of development for good reasons, probably because like safety is important in those environments, and therefore following the rules, being a good diplomat, and or being an expert in your field of whatever, manufacturing or chemicals, whatever. There's a lot of good sense though to be in those stages of development.
Hi everyone, Christopher McCormick, Gilead Sciences. Hi Bill, hi Aman. It was just a pleasure to partner with Global Leadership Associates and really bringing this conversation and paper to life. And Philip, thank you for taking that. I think what you were speaking to and what I heard in that is, as coaches or as leadership development professionals, sometimes when we say we need to meet people where they are, sometimes that's like meeting them where they are in their adult development, where they are in that conversation of adult development, because they may be somewhere else in one versus somewhere else in another, depending on what topic. So sometimes us as coaches being able to figure out, or think we figure out, where are they profiling in this conversation, may help us ask the right questions in the right way that may help trigger them to find a new way to think about things differently. That might evolve the conversation, might not, but at least we're doing the work.
I was the only person in South Africa in my breakout group. I had two other colleagues who were in the US. So obviously my perspective was slightly different. And I was just sharing with them that what vertical development has allowed me to do is be able to understand the action logics that I experience with leaders in South Africa, where representation is a core metric. So you come and say, oh, I'm here to do inclusion work. They say, no, we already have our quota. So we sorted. So I was just sharing with them that coming in with a late stage concept might not suit what that organization or that leader wants to hear or understands. And then there was also talk around in the US, in Florida, where they're defunding all these DI efforts as well. And what does that mean from a vertical development perspective? So that's sort of like a quick summary of what transpired in our group.
Again, meeting people where they are, putting a face and a name to the types of differences that we bring to the table, and being willing to speak that to the world versus, a lot of times the things that make us diverse or inclusive or different or things that, we don't see. Like, you're not going to look at me and know that I have a disability because it's a hidden disability. You're not going to look at me and know that X, Y, and Z about me, but there are places you're not going to know that I'm Jewish at all. Like, you're not going to look and be like, oh yeah, I know that about you, because that's not something that you can see. But there are certain things, like this past weekend with Rosh Hashanah, where, there are things in my life where I want to make sure that I'm carving out those times that are special to me because of my background or my belief. And unless I tell you some of those things, the less you're going to know about it, B, you're going to care, or C, you're going to want to know, why am I taking off early on Friday? Nobody else is taking off early. So there's things in, I think, our work and our environments where we, the more we can start to be vulnerable and share ourselves and share the multitude of intersectionality that is a person and a human being, the more it opens up for people to ask questions, get curious, and start to change the conversation and the narrative.
I'm so glad that we're talking about this, because that was, again, one of my own personal frustrations, was watching over decades that the needle in terms of an EEOC approach or a numbers-based approach is not working. And it's very apparent that it's not working. And some of the tensions or polarities that an organization that may be in, let's say, the achiever action logic or expert, is time horizon, short term versus long term. And sometimes the questions I will ask the company is, do you want to be a 6-year company or a 60-year company? And if you want to be that 60-year company, what is the legacy? What is the vision? What does it look like? And really stretching that time horizon, what would support getting there? And it can't only be EEOC to get more women and Black and Hispanic leaders into particular roles, or get them on boards without that broader acculturation and that broader vision of where this company is going to be in 10, 20, 50, 60 plus years. So the stretching the time horizon, I think, can be a very helpful tension as coaches. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Danny, Aman, Bill. Thank you for this great topic in this forum. In our group, we kicked around the thoughts about looking at this through increasing capacity. And we talked about motivations, being aware of where you are at any given moment. And when you look at the question of what does this mean for me and our practice, or for all of us, what would this mean? I'm thinking it's really about helping your client grow and have the capacity to be able to shift from a very individualistic view to a more organization view, sliding back and forth. When you look at inclusion, we also have to help clients be aware of what their motivators are. So for instance, you could sit down and talk with a leader, and a leader saying, oh, I'm inclusive and I'm taking everyone's feedback. Meanwhile, there's a potential that the leader has a fear of possibly being accused of being a racist, or in another situation, it could be that a leader just doesn't have confidence. So instead of making a decision and being courageous enough to stand alone at some time when it's appropriate, maybe they're beholden on to, I don't have enough information. I can't just act until I've talked to everyone. So we really have to help people look at their motivators, becoming aware of everything that's going on inside of them, while also, from a vertical development standpoint, helping them to see and understand about increasing capacity, and just understanding what are the emotions that you're feeling at any given point in time so that you can act accordingly for whatever the situation may be. So I just offer all that up so that as we continue in this line of work, that we don't get so pigeonholed into holding on to one model versus another model, because we all experience life through all of these models simultaneously. So we just have to help leaders be aware. And the most important thing, obviously, would be psychological safety, being super non-judgmental, so that regardless of our client's background, they feel like they can be open enough to talk about what they are feeling, because if they can't, then we're not serving them at all, and they're trying to solve the wrong problem, and we lose out on the opportunity to help them grow.
That's it from us today. Thank you for being so candid, for being so vulnerable about such a precious and rich subject. I'm really grateful to Aman and Bill and Christopher for their work for today, but to all of you for your contributions in the chat, in the breakouts, and in sharing what you did in the main session. And we look forward to seeing you on another webinar or place with us again soon. Thank you.